A Study in Sherlock is an anthology about, well, isn't that elementary, my dear viewer? This book is a celebration of everything that is Sherlock. A number of Sherlock enthusiast authors contributed to this anthology, including some pretty big names like Laurie R. King, Lee Child, Philip Margolin, and Neil Gaiman. In every story, you can see the author's unique spin on the character, as well as their love for the original canon and materials. I found this book very entertaining. Some of the stories are new, undiscovered Sherlock adventures, while others are tales that just resemble or embody the spirit of Sherlock Holmes. My two favorites I felt were particularly clever. The Men with the Twisted Lips is a retelling of one of the original Sherlock stories, The Man with the Twisted Lip, told from a different perspective, and in doing so, completely recreating the entire story. And The Adventure of the Concert Pianist takes place during the 3 years that Sherlock is supposed dead after the events of Reichenbach Falls. So who, you may be wondering, will solve the case if Sherlock isn't around? Dr. Watson and Mrs. Hudson, of course. How awesome an idea is that? Mrs. Hudson and Dr. Watson taking everything that they've learned from Sherlock to solve a case of their own. Each of these stories managed to keep my interest, even though I have this inexplicably short attention span when it comes to short stories. Most of the tales I loved, and it's such an interesting variety of ideas and continuations of Sherlock's legend. The number of Sherlock-type stories did grate just a bit. I had a more difficult time with these than the undiscovered stories that actually used Sherlock because it was such a variety of different people and situations that were trying to be Sherlock and Watson, etc., without actually being them. It's not that the stories were bad, I just got tired of seeing this attempted and I wanted to see some of the more creative takes. Still, the stories were interesting and they each had a different mystery to uncover, and they were spaced throughout the book so that you didn't get a clump of them all at the same time. All in all, A Study in Sherlock is a great homage to the great detective. I will caution you that some of these stories do spoil the original Sherlock Holmes adventures by blatantly revealing the murderer in such and such and how they did it. I guess it's assumed you would have already read the entirety of the Sherlock Holmes canon by the time you pick this up, which would be a wise choice. Some of these tales obviously mirror or use specific events mentioned in the original adventures, like The Men with the Twisted Lips, and so they won't be fully understood unless you have a working knowledge of the canon. Plus, there's just the immersion part of it. You get so much more out of these stories, feel so much more a part of them, if you know of all of Sherlock and Watson's adventures. I experienced this firsthand because I've only read some of the Sherlock stories, not all of them, so when they referenced something in the canon that I understood, it was like a sweet little secret shared between friends, but then they would mention something in a tale that I hadn't read yet, so I didn't know what they were talking about, and I felt kind of out of the loop. So before the canon, after the canon, read at your own discretion. I will point out that one story, A Triumph of Logic, did contain some swearing. Other than that, I give these stories a clean bill of health. A Study in Sherlock gets 4 stars, and I would warmly recommend it to any and all Sherlock Holmes enthusiasts, or even those with just a passing knowledge. People who enjoy different takes on the original material, like BBC's Sherlock and the show Elementary, could find some of these tales a very interesting use of the original source material.